is a slightly different one, right? To our normal ones.
Where we go with it?
Yeah, this one here is like boxing it's not in a great place right now.
No, I don't want to say that. Don't say that.
Okay,
because we do boxing a disservice when we say that, because it makes it's like when people said hip hop died and stuff. I think it's just different.
It's not died, it's different. Yeah, we're in a different version of the boxing. Like, this is a different chapter of the boxing history that none of us imagined we'd be in, where things are happening that don't make sense. Like, just looking at the overall landscape, we've got YouTubers boxing on massive stages. We've got,
which is good.
It's amazing. I'm not gonna down talk anybody that I mentioned now. I'm just saying that it's different. Like, we've got promoters who don't talk to other promoters, so fights don't get made. We've got champions doing side missions to go and fight guys who ain't boxers. There's so much stuff that I don't like taking place. That, from yesteryear, guys who are like boxing historians would be like, this is nonsense. But this is where we are.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, from here going forward, does boxing go back to being legendary, even in a different way?
Okay.
Or is it a decline that we're watching right now?
I like the question, but then you have to remember where we're at with society as well. And something interesting happened. I watch, and it's necessary because a YouTuber, I Show Speed.
Yes.
You heard of him, yeah? Wicked. He was doing a show in London, but he built his room and he was streaming. It was like a stream, bro. It's the most craziest thing. See how he does his streams, game, the console, the home setup. He built that at a show, bro.
In London?
In London. So just imagine going to see someone in, let's say, Shepherd's Bush, what do you call it?
And they've built their bedroom.
Built it with the same setup, but then he's got the big screen. He's streaming and people are watching. So I said, okay, we're now in a simulation. Things have changed. The game has changed. Yeah. And now you can say, is it good for boxing? Is it bad for boxing? Listen, it's the new way of the world. Like, this is like, it's progressed and a lot has changed. Now it's given us a voice, because let's have this right. In the years gone by in the past,
there's no room for us.
We are not allowed to talk on this.
Steve Bunce is getting us the hell out of here.
Who are these lot? What have they done? Yeah, are you with me? So the rules have changed and the dynamics to get in there. But then the sweet science is always going to be the sweet science. That's the one thing with boxing, and I love the phrase, you don't get to play boxing because you will get found out. We've seen it. So many different fighters. No disrespect to Babbage, but we said, hey, that time is coming for Babbage. You always say with certain fighters, your time is coming where this is going to happen, because this is the skills, you know what I mean? Skills to pay the bills. All these phrases, why they feel like 108-1s, no, they're important. When you get someone with a strong amateur background, they do what they how did you beat me?
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Boxing is always the fighting. We love fighting, and we're fighting from the beginning.
And I think that's what the problem that I have with it. And it's funny when you talk about, in terms of voices, being able to speak on sports. Yeah. My granddad, right, used to watch cricket. But just growing, one of my memories of sitting with my granddad watching cricket was he'd have his stereo, and he'd listen to Jamaican announcers talking about the cricket that he was watching and watch it on mute.
He was before his time. And
when I look at what we do with the watch-alongs, and certain people talking about, I don't really like to listen to the commentary, I listen to that, I'm thinking to myself, it's mad how stuff just happens. Yeah, we are an amalgam. Like, we're on that journey.
It's the simulation.
It's crazy. But so let's look at boxing. The reason why I think boxing is one of those sports that, whilst you're right, the world has changed, and this is just a result of society being very different now. Boxing is a sport that's always been kind of linked to honor in a way, because it's like when you watch a fight have its own storyline. This guy might have been getting beat up in the early rounds, and somehow around 5, 6, 7 round mark, he just starts to build his way back into it. Now he's back in the fight. 10, 11 rounds. We think he's probably down on the scorecard, but he's working his way into it. Round 12, knockout. He's done it. The underdog is the champ. That story there is something that it moves people.
It resonates.
It will always connect. If you're a fan of boxing or not, if you've seen that fight and seen that journey, Lee Wood, Conlan, there's a reason why that fight touched people. That stuff is years of training to get these guys to that space, to do this stuff. And what we're seeing with boxing now it's moving further and further away from the real gritty stories now.
Yeah, because then there's no where it's the microwave era. So it's the microwave era. That's the really honest truth, you know.
Yeah.
You got like, and that's what the YouTube did. Everyone's got the short memory, and they're just not on the journey. And then what's nice is we've stepped out of the Mayweather era. And when I'm
very glad about that.
When I say it's very nice, hear me out in the sense of the Undefeated era, where it's like as soon as the fighter loses, his whole career is done. We've stepped out of that. We're now stepping into a stage where and this is why I say what's good for boxing, because I see the positives. When Ryan Garcia for Tank Davis, these guys have tried to stay away from each other purely because no one wants to lose. And then what we saw after that happened, we saw, okay, they stepped up, Errol Spence and Crawford.
Yeah.
Two that said, legacy-wise, this isn't what we want. Staying away from each other. So there's been some progression in this. However, there's still the nonsense in the heavyweights haven't decided, hey, we're going to put it on the line and someone's legacy, because it's not a problem if we don't meet. It's only a problem if we have this fight and a legacy. So that's the only little piece where, and boxing is really governed. How you feel about boxing is the heavyweights have to set the trend.
That's right, from the top
heavyweights
down.
And what's happened is we're right now is it's kind of bottom heavy, and I know that sounds but it is at the moment. It is. It's like the weight classes. The weight classes is crazy, and you're now hoping for all the joy and everything from the lower weight classes. You're looking at unifications, lower weight classes. We're looking at
it's like when you hear Inui going to unify, like be undisputed again, it's like it almost doesn't mean anything just because the profile that these guys have. A lot of people are going to learn about the opponent the minute the fight is announced. I know for me that's the case. I'm not going to try and pretend like I'm a hardcore fan in every single weight class. I'm not. Do you know what I mean? The heavyweight division does dictate the success of the boxing.
And then there's sometimes a champion that is because even if you was active,
it'd be different.
It'd be fine.
And that's the frustration.
You need an active heavyweight is still important, because those fights, people want to see big, like people that 6-something hit each other in the face. Because it's just maximum violence. And then after what you do, stuff the card with all the other guys that are still exciting.
But you know what the thing is? It's like you look at, say, on a cultural shift, right? You look at, because a lot of people compare today's boxing era with the boxing era of yesteryear and say those guys couldn't touch these guys and these guys, they're just different league. We'll get used to saying stuff like that, but there's a lot of factors that play into it, right? So the landscape for a fighter of, say, 60s and 70s, 80s even, those guys them men weren't talking back to the promoter like that. You see how the culture that we're used to, this fighter dictates this and the promoter can't get him in the ring, and that weren't the case back then. Them men were on whatever the promoter was saying, and there were a lot of cases getting robbed blind. Yeah, I mean, Don King and all these people. Don King has robbed all of our favorite fighters.
Everyone.
Do you know what I mean? And it's that story. It was just a common thing. So these guys were fighting regular, and they know that winning is important, so they keep fighting. And when they lose, they're back in the ring 2 months later. Yeah. There's an urgency that's attached to it, because I guess these men ain't getting treated well. Today's era, these fighters are getting paid. Some of them might even say too much, right? And only too much in terms of the business cannot sustain these type of salaries. That's what I mean by too much. Because realistically, if the money's getting generated, these are the guys who should get it. So now I'm looking at this stuff, I think to myself, has boxing got on silk pajamas?
Boxing, yes, agreed. Boxing has, but then it's silk pajamas, but then the home is not how it used to be. The home is not warm. So why are you got in the silk pajamas? It's not conducive.
He's got the fancy car outside the one-bedroom flat.
The one-bedroom flat. Bro, these boxers, when you talk about boxers and their value, it's not adding up. You're saying, I'm not fighting. You can't fight me unless you give me this.
Andy Ruiz right now is holding a ransom. He wants 10 mil from someone. And it's like, bro, you're just not fighting because of this demand.
But the problem is why boxing, and they need to really address it, because the boxers themselves are hurting their own sport that they love. And another thing that's happening is because they are not fighting as much, the level on show, because the one thing I stand with Senior on a lot of things, but he says that a boxer should be fighting 4 times a year. These men are fighting once a year, twice a year.
It's insane.
But then how do you get more skilled if you only have to come out once a year? Bro, you can't. So now the level is crazy.
Every time you fight, there's ring rust.
Every single time.
There's no real way around it. Like when Floyd was on that final stretch of his career, I believe he was fighting twice a year. And for Floyd, that was a lot. But we saw Floyd turn into he leveled up as a fighter.
Yeah.
Like that Canelo Floyd performance. Yeah. That's a like, you know when Michael Jordan stopped dunking and the fadeaway was perfected? Yeah. That was Mayweather's fadeaway.
But the outlier with Mayweather, it almost feels unfair because Mayweather lives in the gym. Mayweather stays in fight shape. Even now, look how all the other boxers have given away. They're giving away.
It's like we see Prince Nassim and it's like, right, you're almost unrecognizable until I hear the voice.
Yeah.
Floyd still near enough as trim as he was when he was fighting.
Sugar Ray. All of them, you know what I'm saying?
They hold it.
They stay the same because why? It's, a gym rat. You lived in the gym. This was your whole life. You never had to drop weight to find yourself and get back to the person that you used to be. I feel like for boxing to really get back to what I'm hoping for it to be, there needs to be some real honest conversation and accountability. Now, what I do like is there's been big fights. This year, there's been some really big fights. That's why I say it can't be it's not in the bin. But then now we need to push it to the next level. And there needs to be an emerging star that's going to take over.
I agree.
Like, who's going to be the new heavyweight star?
I think we're in a weird place. Do you know what I mean? Because in terms of that, there's a fire and desire that I don't see in a lot of guys coming up. I see a lot of gimmicks and clever moves, business-wise, and then the fight either delivers or it doesn't. But it's one of those things now where I'm like, because I was having a conversation, right, the other day, and talking about UFC fighters and the stakes and the intensity. And what Ngannou's done is opened a lot of conversations up. So you look at Ngannou and how he fought Fury, and there's a lot of conversation about it's like he was happy to get hit, to go in and just have that intensity. I don't care. This is a fight. I've come here to fight. I'm not worried about things that fight. You hear boxers talk about quite a lot. And I'm like, there is an intensity that comes from, I guess, from their position economically in terms of how they get dealt with. Whereas boxers now, it's like the silk pajamas are on the sport.
Yeah.
It's you know what I mean? It's an interesting one.
Yo, people, thanks for watching the Undefeated podcast. Make sure you
like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and all that good stuff, man. This is the place to be.